So first of all, we'd like to have a keynote and welcome back to talk to us about 5 ways to make science more inclusive and diverse, BioHeritage Challenge Director, of course, Dr. Andrea Byrom. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa. So we have obviously switched myself and the Minister, so I will keep it short because I know that we are slightly behind time now. But I did want to lead into today's session with a couple of comments, and I haven't learned how to work the thingy. So, what I wasn't going to do at this symposium is stand up here and give a talk. I was going to instead step back and let a lot of other voices take this place. But then something happened in Christchurch on the 15th of March this year that made me change my mind. And like a lot of people in this country, I asked myself the question, why did this happen here? What's gone wrong? And that is actually what I want to talk about today. So unquestionably, New Zealand on the world stage showed a lot of great leadership. But there were a couple of things that our Prime Minister said right on the very first day that this event happened. One thing she said was, this is not who we are. And the other thing she said is that this is New Zealand's darkest day. And those two things didn't sit very comfortably with me. Now, she made a lot of statements that were certainly showed great leadership. So don't get me wrong, I'm not criticising the Prime Minister here, but I am raising a couple of issues because there was this little voice in my head that said to me, this is who we are. And we do need to step up and take ownership about what happened in New Zealand on the 15th of March. And what has that got to do with the Crazy Ambitious Science Conference anyway? So one of the things that we did last year is, in this Science Challenge, is that we sat down and worked collaboratively with our kahui Māori, our leadership team, our governance group, and a number of other people to develop up our values. And I'm not a politician, so I can't influence what's going to happen in the political world, but what I can do is take some steps in science and research to make a difference in my backyard, and that's what I'm talking about here. So these values that underpin this science challenge are really what we're all about, for a reason, to make this system more diverse and be more inclusive and respectful of other worldviews and knowledge systems. And I hope that you've seen that over the last 24 hours and that you will see that again today. So what are the things that we can do to make science more inclusive and diverse? Well, first of all, take the time to listen to the diversity of voices that are out there. Now, that's really hard. We all know that there's a huge amount of pressure on scientists in the system to get more funding and to work really hard on, usually across a number of projects. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of competition. But I do want to give you an example of a couple of projects that you heard about yesterday in this Science Challenge that have taken the time to listen to, first of all, community voices in the case of the Kauri Rescue Project, and also to our kaumātua and our knowledge holders in the case of Monica Girth's project on Kauri dieback. So take that time to listen to the diverse voices, to go out there and talk to communities, to go out there and talk to knowledge holders, and spend the time to understand how you can integrate that into your research. And more importantly, to acknowledge that those worldviews are equal to ours. Second thing I want to say is that we need to apply a principle of equity more often in our research. So I am going to come in a moment to the issue of power structures and institutional structures in this country, but certainly at a research level, what we can do is to step up and adequately resource and acknowledge that those different knowledge holders and different ways of knowing should be resourced equitably and should be acknowledged, and we should be learning from their leadership and their knowledge rather than the other way around. The third thing I want to say is that it's great to call out racism and sexism when we see it in our society, and we should all do that. But personally, I don't feel comfortable when I see it being called out with further racism, ageism and sexism. And so this was the response of Susie Wiles last year when a new Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor was announced in 2018. And she, acknowledged that we now have a woman, and who wouldn't be pleased at seeing that a bit more diversity in a position so important in New Zealand. However, Susie said this. And whilst I think it's really important to acknowledge that diversity and inclusivity, this, in my opinion, is not the right way to do it. So I know a lot of older white men who have actually helped me a lot in my career. And some of them are sitting in this room, and you know who you are. And so I guess my point here is, don't call out racism and sexism with further racism and sexism. It's not okay to say to people, you're an old, white, particular ethnicity and have a particular look, and therefore you have no place in our science system. That's wrong. My fourth point is that we should get involved in projects that connect people with the environment more. It's so easy to say that, and it's easy to understand intuitively what that means, but it's actually quite hard to do. We have seen some great examples over the last day or so of what that looks like, but certainly the key messages from the IPBES report just a couple of weeks ago, and the point that Aroha made yesterday, was that when we have local communities, and in many cases Indigenous communities, taking control of local environments, that's when we're starting to see the best biodiversity outcomes. Or perhaps I should say the biodiversity declines aren't as severe. So that's telling us something. And we really need to get more involved in projects that do that kind of work. And that also means that we need to do social research and understand how people think and make decisions alongside our biophysical research. And then my final point is that to take the time to investigate our history. We have a fantastic and very interesting history in this country, and we also have a treaty, and that sets us up really well compared to some other countries for including those diverse voices in science, but we have a long way to go. And that's why the comment about this is New Zealand's darkest day didn't sit very well with me, because you don't have to go back very much further than 150 years to know that it wasn't actually our darkest day of terrorism in this country. So I guess my point is that our history actually tells us a lot about how we can move forward, and we need to embrace that and learn a little bit more. Go and do a treaty course. Go and learn te reo. Go and do something that means something to you. So I guess I'll finish just by saying that why would we embrace diversity and inclusivity in science and research? The main reason is that we do get better outcomes and we get greater impact from our work if we do that. And we're starting to see a lot of evidence for that now in this science challenge, but globally, and well, certainly nationally and globally, we also know that's true. And there's plenty of evidence, which I'm happy to talk about later. Kia ora, thank you.